We're up to the Mishnah as a Chadalan on the days. The Mishnah is describing the machlokes between Rav Tarfon and the Rabbanon. Again, the rule is that if a shar is mazik, the first 3 times you pay chatzi nezek. The question is, what if it's mazik b'shus hanizik? What if it breaks into someone's backyard? See, Karen has a stringency that Shein v'regel does not have, that Karen is chayiv in Rishus harabim. So if the Karen is mazik in Rishus harabim, it's for sure chatzi nezek. The question is, what happens if the Karen breaks into Rishus hanizik, breaks into the area? So if it's Shein v'regel, it's chayiv nezek shalim. The question is, what is Karen? Do you say Karen is chatzi nezek? Comes Rav Tarfon, he has this new shita that Karen b'shus hanizik is nezek shalom. Karen b'shus hanizik is nezek shalom. So shar hamazik b'shus. Let's see the Mishnah inside. Shar hamazik b'shus hanizik. If you have a shar hamazik b'shus hanizik, so the shar is mazik in the property of the damager, of the damagee, so it's not supposed to be there. So nogach, nogaf, noshach, rabat, boat. These are the 5 told us of Karen. B'shus harabim mishalim chatzi nezek. If the animal does it in Rishus harabim, you pay half damages. B'shus hanizik. But what if it happens in the premises of the damaged party? Meaning, you broke into someone's backyard and the animal gored. Comes Rav Tarfon, he says nezek shalom. Chiddush is nezek shalom. Chacham say no, chatzi nezek. Now the Chacham make a lot of sense because there's no source in the Torah. The Torah says chatzi nezek. So where is Rav Tarfon coming from that he says nezek shalom? So the answer is it's a kav chaimer. Rav Tarfon is a kav chaimer. I'm not Rav Tarfon. Rav Tarfon says like this: I have a kav chaimer. The kav chaimer is as follows: Uma b'makom shehikil al shein val regel b'shus harabim shu pater hichmer aleihen b'shus hanizik l'shalom nezek shalom. Rav Tarfon says the following: which is more severe, Rishus harabim or Rishus hanizik? So when it comes to damages, we know that Rishus hanizik is more chamer. Why? Because shein v'regel are pater b'shus harabim and chayiv Rishus hanizik. You see, Rishus hanizik is a more severe area. So if Karen b'shus harabim is chatzi nezek, kal v'chomer b'shus hanizik is nezek shalom. Meaning, you see, if you analyze the 2 domains, you have Rishus harabim and you have Rishus hanizik. Rishus harabim is not as severe as Rishus hanizik because Rishus harabim is exempt by shein v'regel. So you see, Rishus hanizik is more severe. So if Rishus harabim by Karen is chatzi nezek, it makes sense that Rishus hanizik would be nezek shalom.
How can you learn a greater chiddush? I mean, it makes sense. You should be able to learn what you can learn, but you can't learn more.
Perfect. So he described, what you described is the concept of dayoy, levam, and adin liyas kenidan. You're right. That is a very good point. The kav chaimer is structured in such a way that if in Rishus harabim, Rishus nizek is more severe than Rishus harabim. So if Rishus harabim it's chazi nezek, kav chaimer, Rishus nizek is nezek shalom. That concept of taking kav chaimer and then going further is called dayoy. I'll give you an example. I was thinking just now. Let's say you have a kid who's a bad kid and a good kid. If the bad kid gets a slice of pizza, you say, Kal v'chomer, the good kid should get a slice of pizza. What if you make the following Kal v'chomer? If the bad kid gets a slice of pizza, Kal v'chomer, the good kid should get a pie. No. You could say Kal v'chomer equal to what you're learning out. You can't go past it. So you're making a very good point, which is the Kal v'chomer is basically making that Rishus harabim, Rishus hanizik is more severe than Rishus harabim. So if Rishus harabim is chatzi nezek, Rishus hanizik should become nezek shalom. That's called dayoy. Dayoy means we do not go further. Dayoy levam and adin liyas kenidan. If you have a kav chaimer where A is more severe than B, we don't say that A will go further. A will at least match, but not go further. So the Gemara says that was.
In terms of understand. If a cat show is sitting 200,
okay, well there you go.
5 million. One of it's 300, you get at least a million.
There you go.
Not necessarily more.
Let me ask you,
Yeah.
Is it really the same concept as tafasim arupa lo tafasim?
No. It's exeris hakasav. As we're going to see in the pasuk, it's flowing down from the Torah that if you have a kav chaimer of A, B, B, meaning A is a concept, B doesn't have a source, we'll say, well, if B is more severe, then it's at least A. To go past A, we don't have a source for that. That was Rav Tarfon's statement, though. It should be past that. You should get nezek shalom. What did the Rabbanon respond? Amar le daye lefamin adin liyas kenidan. That's not how kav chaimers work. All you could do is prove to me that Rishus hanizik should be chatzi nezek. You can't go past that. Now, by the way, there is one point, though. I just want to say one point. According to the Chachamim, what exactly is the kav chaimer? I'm going to speak it outside, and I think you'll see the glaring issue. Right now, I know, before we start this Mishnah, I know that when you gore in Rishus Harabim it's Chatzi Nezek, and when you gore in Rishus HaNizik, it's also Chatzi Nezek. The Kal V'chomer should take us to Nezek Shalom, and Rav Chacham say, no, you can't do that. You can't do that. So what is the purpose of the Kal V'chomer? To teach me that it's Chatzi Nezek in both locations? I knew that before the Kal V'chomer. This is an example where actually employing Dayai doesn't just stymie you, it completely ruins the Kal V'chomer. Because think about it, without the Kal V'chomer, what's the halacha with the goring? It's Chatzi Nezek. That's what I know, it's Chatzi Nezek. The purpose of the Kal V'chomer is to teach me something. The Chum say, no, Daya, no. So according to the Chum, you know what the Kal V'chomer does? Zero. That's why Rav Tarfon, we're going to see in the Gemara, Rav Tarfon understands the rule of Daya. He applies it throughout Shas. He just doesn't apply it here because he says if you employ the rules of Daya, then the Kal V'chomer teaches you nothing. Because I know it's Chatzi Nezek before this Mishnah. It's always going to be Chatzi Nezek. Karen is always Chatzi Nezek. The purpose of the Kal V'chomer is to say, no, Rishus HaNizik is Nezek Shalom. Chum say, no, Daya, you can't do that. So what's the purpose of the Kal V'chomer? You're back to square one.
Who cares? So you don't have the Kal V'chomer.
Fine, no, but his point is, Daya limits a Kal V'chomer. It doesn't ruin a Kal V'chomer. As we'll see in the Gemara. So that the Rabbanan said to Rav Tarfon, Daya levamin adin li is kedidan. If you're learning out, your structure of your Kal V'chomer is that if Karen b'Rishus Harabim is Chatzi Nezek, Karen b'Rishus HaNizik is Nezek Shalom. Can't do that. You could just limit it to what the source material is. If you're learning it out from Karen b'Rishus Harabim, so Karen b'Rishus Harabim is Chatzi Nezek, so this is Chatzi Nezek. You got to limit it. Daya levamin adin li is kedidan ma b'Rishus Harabim Chatzi Nezek, b'Rishus HaNizik Chatzi Nezek. So. And you'll see the examples throughout the daf. You'll see examples of Daya, and I think it'll start sinking it a little more. Amr lehem afani. So go to the continue in the Mishnah. Afani lo yadin karen mekaren. Rav Tarfon says, I'm going to tweak the Kal V'chomer. Maybe that'll avoid Daya. How is he going to tweak the Kal V'chomer? Right now, the original Kal V'chomer was which is more severe, Rishus Haram or Rishus HaNizik. So we said Rishus HaNizik is more severe. So for Rishus Haram is Chatzi Nezek, Rishus HaNizik is definitely Nezek Shalom. And we said we don't like that. You could say Rishus HaNizik is definitely Chatzi Nezek, but to go past that is Daya. So Rav Tarfon says, okay, let's tweak the Kal V'chomer. Maybe that'll help. The answer is it won't. But Rav Tarfon said like this, Ani Odin Karen Meregel. Instead of focusing on Rishus Haram, Rishus HaNizik, let's focus on Karen and Regel. If Karen and Regel are chayiv nezek shalem b'Rishus HaNizik and potter legamri in Rishus Harabim, then Karen, which is chayiv chatzi nezek Rishus Harabim, Kal V'chomer should be nezek shalem in Rishus HaNizik. Karen and Regel are potter entirely in Rishus Harabim, but chayiv nezek shalem b'Rishus HaNizik, there's no half, they go whole. So Karen, which is chayiv chatzi nezek, Kal V'chomer should be nezek shalem in Rishus HaNizik. It's incredibly similar. Well, yeah, but well, first of all, are you saying if Chatzin has a knas, does that affect things? That's a good point. Maybe we're going with Chatzin as a man. I'll check it up. Maybe we're following this far.
So Karen, we're saying
Karen is entirely potter in Rishus Harabim, but entirely chayiv in Rishus HaNizik. So Karen, which is chayiv Chatzi Nezek Rishus Harabim, it should be chayiv Chatzi full Nezek. But it's still Daya. The Gemara says, they say the same thing. You didn't change anything. The premise of the Kal V'chomer is still the follow. The premise of the Kal V'chomer is still, you could tweak it, but it's still the same thing, which is, if in Rishus Harabim it's chayiv, Kal V'chomer in Rishus HaNizik. But then you can't go past that. The Rabbanan do not like it. They say, by both times. And that's why the Rabbanan feel that Rishus HaNizik is Chatzi Nezek, not Nezek Shalom. Now let's just talk about, basically, we're done with the Daya of how it conforms in our sugya. Today's daf is just going to be analyzing Daya in other cases, other examples of Daya, who holds of it, who doesn't hold of it, v'chule. What is the source of Daya? That again, if you employ a Kal V'chomer, it caps the Kal V'chomer. Like with the pizza case. The bad kid gets a slice, the good kid will definitely get a slice, not that the good kid will get a pie. That's concept of Daya, that you limit. If you're going to learn A from B, then A can't pass B. So, Rav Tarfon Leslie Daya, right now it seems like Rav Tarfon doesn't believe in the concept of Daya because he applies it in this case. The problem is Daya is a biblical concept. It's not a rabbinic. It's a deraisa. Where does it come from? But Daya deraisa Tanya medin Kal V'chomer ketzad. What's the source of Daya? So the Gemara says like this: when Miriam said lashon hara about Moshe Rabbeinu. So Moshe Rabbeinu is davening first. So what did Hashem say? Let me read you the pasuk. I'll read you the pasuk, and then you'll see. Okay, the pasuk says like this: "V'yomer Hashem al Moshe." You don't have this, but I'll just read the pasuk. Hashem said to Moshe, "Avia yarek yikarek b'faneha." If a human father spit in her face, Haloiti kolim shivas yamim. She would be embarrassed and put in quarantine for a week. As Hashem said, if a human father would spit in her face, she would quarantine for a week. Tichalim shivas yamim. So tisaga shivas yamim. So she should do the same thing here. This is how you're supposed to read the pasuk. This is the conversation that Hashem had to Moshe. Moshe Rabbeinu doesn't want her to go into quarantine at all. Hashem said like this: if a human being would spit in her face, she would quarantine for 7 days. Kavachoymer me, I'm Hakadosh Baruch Hu, that she offended me. She should quarantine for 14 days. To that, Hashem says no. Tisaga shivas yamim. Hashem says no. We have no source that a person who offends.
The problem is why 12 and why 14?
Whatever, anything more than 7.
1,000 days.
Anything more than 7. The point is, a kavachomer, here's the premise. We have no source that if you upset Hashem, that if you're embarrassed by Hashem or embarrass Hashem, whatever that means, that you should quarantine. But Hashem is saying there's a precedent by human beings. By human beings, it was 7 days. So if you do it for 7 days, by me, kavachomer, it should be more than that. You want to say 14, you want to say a month. It should be more. But what does Hashem say? 7. Why? If I'm learning it out from human interactions, I'm going to limit it to human interactions. Again, I know nothing about Hashem's interactions. I know human. Human is 7. Hashem, it should be more. Kavachaymer. But we're going to limit it to 7. So, haloiti kolim shivas yamim. By a human being, it would be 7 days. So, by Hashem, it should be more. But tisaga shivas yamim. I'm going to limit it to 7. Because dai levam min aden liyos kenidan. So the Gemara says, this implies that you should make a kavachomer that she should quarantine for at least 14 days, because double that of a human being, because Hakadosh Baruch Hu's busha is greater.
A lot of words. Do it again.
Rav Tarfon Leslie Daye? I don't know where you want me to restart from. Where would you like me to start from?
Just go back to where you started.
Okay, we'll start from the Gemara. Rav Tarfon Leslie Daye, does Rav Tarfon not believe in Daye? It's a biblical concept. Titania. Midin kavachomer ketzar. What's the source of Daye in the Torah? The pasuk says, "Vayomer Hashem al Moshe v'avia yarak yirkem b'faneh haloiti kolim shivas yamim." The pasuk says that if she would be embarrassed, she would be spit on by her father, she would quarantine for 7 days. That implies that you're supposed to make the following kavachomer. Kavachomer l'shchina arba asa yom. Kavachomer that embarrassment and rebuke from HaKadosh Baruch Hu should warrant 14 days of humiliation. But what does the pasuk say? Tisaga shivas yam, just 7. Why? So the question is, if it's a biblical concept, why does Rav Tarfon not employ it in our discussion? And the answer is what I said before. Again, if you employ Daya Levam and Adin Liyas Kenidan in our discussion, then what you're saying is Karen B'Shus Haram is Chatzin Nezek, Karen B'Shus HaNizek is also Chatzin Nezek. I knew that already. The purpose, before this Mishnah, I knew it's Chatzin Nezek everywhere, because that's what Karen is. The purpose of the Kavachomer is to elevate it to Nezek Shalim. Comes the Chum and say Dayoy. You know, Rav Tarfon says, I agree with Dayoy if the Kavachomer can still stand after Dayoy. You see, in the case of HaKadosh Baruch Hu with Miriam, I start off, before the Kavachomer, there is no quarantine for being humiliated by Hashem, 0. Only by human beings. Kavachomer takes it to 7. Okay, I wanted to take it to 14, but Daya limits it to 7. But I started with nothing, and the Kavachomer gave me something. Over here, I start off with Chatzi Nezek. I know it's Chatzi Nezek. The Kavachomer is supposed to do something. If you employ Daya, you start with Chatzi Nezek and you end with Chatzi Nezek. I accomplish nothing. Rav Tarfon does not believe in Daya if it ruins a Kavachomer. He'll believe in it to limit a Kavachomer, not to ruin a Kavachomer.
Are we always forced to use a Kavachomer if it's glaring, if it's there? Why do we have to bring a Kavachomer?
Yes.
Always.
Yeah, it seems like it, yeah. It's not something based on Messiah, it's based on Svar. It's based on Cheshbon.
If we see a Svara, we have
Correct.
to
Yeah. It's not based on Messiah. It's not like a Gzeira Shava. We're going to see later on, if you have a Gzeira Shava, then die is not a problem, at least according to most opinions. Like if you have a Gzeira Shava, if we had a Gzeira Shava, I'd be like, fine, okay, Gzeira Shava is Gzeira Shava, go do your thing. But because of the Kavachomer, it's got to be limited. So why does Rav Tarfon, what about Daya? The answer is Rav Tarfon says, Ki lesli Daya hecha de mavrich Kavachomer, hecha de loy mavrich Kavachomer isli Daya. He says, I'll employ Daya if it doesn't ruin the Kavachomer. In this case, it ruins the Kavachomer. And he explains why. Hasam shchina shiva de shchina like sivi. Says Rav Tarfon, in that case, you see, it's not like, you know what would be a perfect example of Daya ruining the Kavachomer by Hashem, by the case of Miriam? if you knew going in that human beings' interactions is 7 days, and you knew going in that embarrassed by Hashem is also 7, and then you'll say, Kal v'chomer, it should be more. No, dayoi. So you started with 7 and you end with 7. That would be a dayoi ruining a Kal v'chomer. But says Tarfon, that's not what happens. Shiva de shchina like sivi. There's no source that humiliation by Hashem requires any quarantine. The only thing you have is human beings. So you have 0 by Hashem. Human beings is 7. Kal v'chomer, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu should be something. You want to know how high to go? You can't go past 7. But at least you started with 0, you ended with 7. You got something accomplished. Also, Kal v'chomer aisi abesa. So the Kal v'chomer really should take you to 14 days. Also, dayoi apik shiva v'oiki shiva. But dayoi limits it, but at least you accomplished something. Aval hacha chatzi nezek siv. Over here I knew it was chatzi nezek before. Also, Kal v'chomer aisi chatzi nezek achrinim and asa nezek shalom. The purpose of the Kal v'chomer is to take you to nezek shalom. Idarshis daya after Kal v'chomer. But if you employ daya, you have no Kal v'chomer. Therefore, there's no purpose. So why did the Rabbanan believe that you could employ daya even to ruin a Kal v'chomer? Because they say by Moshe Rabbeinu and Miriam, they knew that there was 7 days before this. They knew that it was 7 days by a quarantine by a human being and 7 days by Hashem. So this would the game. The game would be you should make a Kal v'chomer to make it more than 7. No dayai. Keep it at what you thought and accomplish nothing. So the Rabbanan say, Shiva de Shchiniksiv, Tisagar Shivas Yam. Meaning they look at it as, when Hashem said, if a human being would spin their face, it would be 7 days. So if Tarfon says, stop, so how much by Hashem? I would think 0, Kal v'chomer, let's take it to 14. No, Tisagar Shivas Yamim, limit it. The word Tisagar Shivas Yamim is limiting it. The Rabbanan say, no. This is what Hashem meant to say. If you embarrassed by a human being, it's 7. And if you're embarrassed by Hashem, it's Tisagar Shivas Yamim, it's also 7. That's it. Meaning, Tisagar Shivas Yam is not daya. It's just saying. But I know going in, it's 7 by Hashem and it's 7 by a human being. You might think it's more. No daya. So over there, the Rabbanan actually have an example. Their source of daya accomplishes nothing. But they feel that that's the rules of a Kal v'chomer. You always go with daya, even if it ruins the Kal v'chomer. Even if it makes the Kal v'chomer basically...
They're using the Kal v'chomer as a backup.
I don't really know. I'll be honest. According to them, what's the purpose of playing? It's like an intellectual pursuit where you're just going here and then you're coming back. You're not actually accomplishing anything. You're saying Kal v'chomer should take it further, but Daya says no. Go back to what you thought. Okay, so I'm not sure what's that. Okay, that the purpose is to teach you the rules of Daya. So the Rabbanon, okay, Rav Tarfon says no. Tisagar darshin and Daya. The Rav Tarfon says no. Tisagar is teaching you Daya. That you might think that it's really 0. You might think 14. Daya is 7. For Rabbanon, ksiv krachin of Tisagar Miriam. The Rabbanon say no. There's another passage to tell you Dayai, and that's Tisagar Miriam. Rav Tarfon, how dafilu ba'alma darshina Dayai. Rav Tarfon has his 2 psukim to tell you Dayai, one by Miriam and one by other cases. Why do I need both?
Why does Dayai not teach you that you can never do Kal v'chomer?
What do you mean?
That this Dayai means that this is what.
Well, that's what the Rabbanon do. Rav Tarfon doesn't think that makes sense.
Not only in the case of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, just in general.
Oh, so that's the Rav Tarfon. Rav Tarfon says that you need 2 sources of Daya, one to tell you in general that there's a rules of Daya, and one to tell you by the case of Miriam. Why? Because the rules of Daya in that case, if you actually think about it, Lukuli Alma, what did Daya do? It limited the amount of days she was in quarantine, right? Let's go with Rav Tarfon. Start off. I don't know how many days to quarantine a woman when she offended by, or she gets rebuked by Hashem. I should say 14. Go past a human being. Daya limits it to 7. I can actually look at that as not something that is used throughout Shas and throughout Tanakh. Maybe that was just a leniency to make Miriam not be embarrassed for the cover of Moshe. Meaning, you understand that Daya prevented her from being embarrassed. Meaning, without Daya, I would say she should quarantine for 14 days. Daya says 7. Maybe that's not something that's a rule that is employed by all Kal v'chomers. Maybe that's just to be she's a tzaddikus and she's Miriam's sister. So no. That's Rav Tarfon says, Loi tomer halcha mishum kvoide shel Moshe. Don't say that this is not a real rule for Kal v'chomers. This was just something Hashem did for cover of Moshe. Aval ba'al maloi, kamash maloi. No. Daya, it's telling you the reason why you have the words Tisagar Shivas. Telling you, no, this is a rule, all Kal v'chomers. This is not just to be makel on Miriam. Okay. Now, Amar le Rav Papa Abaya. Now we're just going to, we don't have to focus on what we did anymore. Now we're just going to go through examples of Daya throughout Shas. Right now we're basically saying, according to Rav Tarfon, Rav Tarfon. According to Rav Tarfon, he'll employ Daya, but not if it ruins the Kal v'chomer. The Gemara says, Amar le Rav Papa Abaya, ha tana deloy darish Daya, afagav deloy mafre Kal v'chomer. It seems to be, though, that everyone agrees in Daya. The machlek is do you employ daya when it ruins the kavachomer? But conceptually, you should always have daya to limit kavachomers. Rav Papa says to Abaya, I actually found a Tana who doesn't believe in daya. That he'll make a kavachomer, like with the bad kid gets a slice of pizza, the good kid gets a pie. He does that. Even though it seems to be everyone should employ daya to limit a kavachomer, he's into it. What's the source? Okay, let me give a quick hakdama. A quick hakdama. The rule is like this. A person who sees three emissions of a zav, it's not a seminal emission because the seminal emission is healthy. The color of the consistency is a little different. It comes out in a healthy way as opposed to this. This is more like I don't know, I think it's more close to like gonorrhea or something like that. It's more closer to a sexually transmitted disease. So the halacha is that when someone is a zav, he is tameh, and the pasuk describes that the spittle that comes out of him is tameh. That the spittle is tameh, that if anyone touches the spittle or carries the spittle, they're tameh for Shivas Yom. Here's the Gemara's question. How do I know if he has a regular seminal emission, not a regular healthy seminal emission while he's sleeping at night or with his wife, he's not supposed to, but that the semen is also tameh? How do I know this? That's the Gemara wants to know. Okay? Okay. Titania. Keri bizav minayin. How do I know that the zera of a zav it's able to contaminate someone that touches it or carries it? How do I know that? Again, the pasuk never says it. So what's the source? V'dinu, I have a kavachomer. What's the kavachomer? Ma tahar b'tahar, tameh b'tameh, tameh b'tar in adin shea tameh b'tahar, tameh b'tameh. Okay, let me explain. What do we know about a zav? His spittle contaminates. Okay. I'm not a zav right now. Congratulations, I'm not a zav right now. And if I spit on you, it doesn't contaminate. I'm tahar, my spittle is tahar. So if the spittle of a tahar person is tahar, and the spittle of a zav is tameh, so then the keri, semen of every person is tameh. Right? When a man sees zera, he has to go to the mikveh. That's called right tefillas Ezra. So we're trying to figure out, is the zera of a zav tameh by touching and carrying? So we said, well, kavachomer. If the spittle of a zav is tameh, and the spittle of a regular person is not, so if the spittle of a regular person is not tameh, but the spittle of a zav is, then the zera of a zav, the zera of a regular person is tameh, kavachomer, the zera of a zav is also tameh. So basically, we're saying you're just comparing a zav to a regular person. A regular person, spittle, not tameh. Zera, tameh. So a zav, spittle is tameh, kavachomer zera is tameh. So we're learning out a zav from a regular person. Now, that's the kavachomer. So we're saying if the zera of a regular person is tameh, the zera of a zav, loy kol sheken. Here, let me ask you a question. The zera of a regular person is only tameh by contact, not by carrying. The zera of a zav is both.
By carrying?
Meaning, if let's say you carry without touching it, it's on someone's clothing, you're carrying it without touching it, you're not tameh by a regular person, only by a zav. So the source that is, so think about it. The keri of a zav is tameh. Why? Because it's learned out from a regular person. If the zera of a regular person is tameh, kavachomer is zav. But the regular person's zera is only tameh through touching. Over here, it's more. So I learned it out from a regular person, and I went way past it. So that's an example of a kavachomer without daya. I made a kavachomer, but I went way past the source material. The source material is zera of a regular person is tameh, kavachomer the zera of a zav. But the zera of a regular person is only tameh through contact. Over here, it's contact and masa. So I source material, I went way past it. That's the source of not caring about daya.
Yeah, but that's because it's a different rule. It's a different.
No, it's a kavachomer, and I took it past the source material. No daya.
It's a kavachomer.
It's a kavachomer.
Rules.
Why is it different rules? It's a kavachomer.
The rule says it's tameh.
I'm learning out. There's no source that the zera of a zav is tameh. It's learned out from a regular person. So if you're going to learn out from a regular person, it should be limited to the stringencies of a regular person, but it goes way past it. That's a source of a kavachomer without daya. The Gemara says, "V'amai neima ahani kavachomer lamaga ahani daya lafuke masa." If you employ daya, then the zera of a zav should not be contaminated through carrying. You see that it's no daya. The Gemara just has a quick attempt to reject this. V'chi tema lamaga leitzruch. Again, what's the source? What's the kavachomer? If zera of a regular person is tameh by touching, then kavachomer zera of a zav is tameh through touching and carrying. That's basically what it is. So maybe maybe it's like this. Maybe the zera of a zav, I don't need a pasuk to tell me that it's tummy. Maybe I already know that it's tummy through touching. Meaning, we start off with the way it works is you start off the sugya. We're going to go past 8:30 today. I apologize. We start off the sugya basically like this. I do not know that the zera of a person, a regular person, I know is tamei through touching. That's all I know. Zera of a zav, I know nothing. Kal v'chomer tells me that not only is it tamei through touching, it's tamei through carrying. That's a kal v'chomer without daya. Maybe it's not like that. Maybe I go into the sugya knowing like this. Zera of a regular person is tamei. Maybe I know the zera of a zav is also tamei through touching. Why? Because why should he be better than a zera of a regular person? The kal v'chomer now is only doing something. Meaning, maybe this is an example of the reason why we say daya is because without daya there will be no kal v'chomer. We assume that we go into this that I know nothing about a zav, about his zera. I know nothing. I don't know if it's tamei. I don't know if it's tahar. Kal v'chomer says not only is it tamei through touching, it's tamei through carrying. That's a kal v'chomer without daya. Maybe no. Maybe I started the kal v'chomer. I knew something. That is, a regular person's zera is tamei. A zav's zera is tamei because it should be the same. The kal v'chomer now teaches me something, one step up, and now I need to do that, and therefore the fact that it doesn't employ daya, it makes sense because we don't employ daya to ruin a kal v'chomer. So the Gemara says, maybe I already knew going in that the zera of a zav is tamei through touching. Why? Because why should he be any more lenient than a regular person? Meaning, a regular person's zera is tamei. Why should I think a zera of a zav is tamei? Therefore, maybe I already knew this, and therefore the purpose of the kal v'chomer is just to teach me carrying. The Gemara says, no, it's true. Maybe I know. Why would it be that I know nothing? Why would it be that the zera of a zav would be tahar when the zera of a person is tamei? Like without a kal v'chomer, why would he be different? Because maybe the whole inyan of a zera being tamei is by a regular person is because a regular person's zera was completely, it came out of his body purely healthy. Once the guy is a zav and he has an illness in his body, then maybe part of the zera that came out of him was also due to the illness, and maybe it's taka not tamei at all. Kal v'chomer, and that's an example of going past the daya. The Gemara says midi v'lo davar achik, it doesn't really say that, and therefore. Actually, we're going to go with this possibility, and that is that really this is not an example of daya, of not employing daya, because really I know going in, the zera of a regular person is tamei through touching, and the zera of a zav is also tamei through touching, because he should be no different. Therefore, the kal v'chomer is to teach me something, and that is through carrying. Okay, so we still do not have a source of no one employing daya. We'll get to it in a few minutes. Now, the Gemara just says like this, as an aside, we're going to go completely agav for a few lines, and that is, we just got finished saying in this brisa that the zera of a zav is tamei through touching and tamei through carrying. Right, zera of a regular person is tamei through touching, but the zera of a zav is tamei through touching and carrying. Who's the source of that? The Gemara says, who's the source that the zera of a zav is tamei through carrying? Lo Rav Elazar, lo Rav Yeshua. It's not Rav Elazar, not Rav Yeshua. Just agav. This brisa is not authored by Rav Elazar or Rav Yeshua. Titania, as the brisa says, Titanan, and the Mishnah says, Shichva zera shel zav mitame b'magav ve'enim mitame b'masa. Div Rav Elazar. Rav Elazar says very clearly, the zera of a zav is only tamei through touching, not through carrying. So boom, he's not the author of that brisa. Let's keep going. What does Rav Yeshua say? Af mitame b'masa. Rav Yeshua says, no. The zera of a zav is tamei through carrying. Oh, why? Because it's likely that inside the zera there's probably some zav fluid. But not because the zera itself, meaning Rav Yeshua doesn't believe that the zera of a zav is actually tamei through carrying. It's just that statistically, within the zera fluid, there's probably some zav fluid. But if Lu Yitzur, you were able to, with a microscope, look and say there is no zav material in the zera, he would actually say it's not tamei through carrying. So we actually do not know anyone who said that it's tamei through carrying. Rav Eliezer said no, and Rav Yeshua said yes, but only because he says practically there's probably some zav fluid within the zera. But zera on its own is actually does not contract tuma through carrying. You know what I'm saying? Rav Yeshua says, Af metam maser. Rav Yeshua says, no, zera of a zav is tamei through carrying. Why? Because it's impossible that there's no zav fluid. The implication is, Akan like Amar Rav Yeshua hasam el sheyashel b'tzitzuk halav hachiloi. That implies that Rav Yeshua does not believe that the zera of a zav, that the semen of a zav actually contaminates through carrying. It's just that there's probably some zav fluid within the semen. But the zera on its own actually doesn't. So we do not. Who is the one who says that the zera on its own contaminates through carrying? So the Gemara says not Rav Eliezer, not Rav Yeshua, lahaitanahu. Titnan, it's the following Mishnah. L'mayla mehen, go to the next page. Zoivai, these are the things that are tummy through carrying. Zoivai shel zav, zav fluid. Roikai, his spittle. Shichva zera, and his zera. Boom, straight up. Umimei raglav, and his urine. V'dam anida, and the blood of anida. Metamimei magamasa. These are all tummy through carrying as well. So you see, this is the source. It's very, very clear because it says part of the materials that are able to contaminate through carrying is shichva zera. Okay, beautiful. Maybe this Tana also agrees with Rav Yeshua, not that the zera on its own contaminates, but only because statistically there's probably some zav fluid in the zera. The answer is no. It actually, this Tana actually holds that the zera on its own contaminates. Why? Because look at the list. The list said zav material, then it said spittle, then it said zera. If the reason why zera is tummy just because there's probably some zav material in it, then why would you put spittle in between the two in the list? You know what I'm saying? Again, there's two reasons why the zav's material. Again, zera of a zav contaminates. That's a lot of words. Zera of a zav contaminates. So I was going to text you. I was like, zera of a zav contaminates. So it says Rav Yeshua, not that it actually contaminates, it says it probably has a zav fluid. This Mishnah, holds it contaminates on its own. How do I know that he doesn't say the same thing as Rav Yeshua? That maybe it only contaminates because it has zav fluid in it? Because look at the lashon in the Mishnah. Zoiva shel zav fluid, roikai his spittle, v'shichva zera, and zera. If the reason why zera contaminates just because it has zav fluid in it, why would you put spittle in between the two? Okay. Okay, let me just explain over the next 5 minutes what we're going to be doing. We're going to be bringing one more kal v'chomer without the implication of daya, without employing daya, and then we're going to say no, it's not actually a kal v'chomer, it's really a gzeir shav. And once it's a gzeir shav, then the rules of daya don't apply. It's all off. Exactly. So let's find. This is another example of daya. This is the following. Tana does not employ daya. So you told me daya is a biblical concept from Hashem himself. This Tana does not employ daya. The Tanya, the Brisa says like this. We want to know, how do I know that a wooden mat contaminates through, is able to become tamei through tamei mes? How do I know that a mat is able to become tamei through tamei mes? Because when the pasuk describes tamei misa, it actually describes wooden materials that have a clay kibul, like a bowl. Wooden materials that have a like a receptacle, a flat wooden material called pshute kli'etz, so like a mat. How do I know a mat is able to contract tumah through a dead body? That's the question. So that's what we're trying to figure out. How do I know that a wooden flat material is able to contract tumah through a dead body? So dinhu, it's a kal v'chomer. What's the kal v'chomer? Uma pachim ketanim. Okay, so if you have small earthenware jugs that you can't put your finger in, the spout is too small. So the halacha is tahirim bezav. Earthenware materials are only able to contaminate through the inside. You have to be able to touch the inside, not through the outside. So normally, if it's a big spout, you could put your hand in. Yeah, I think it's based on a pasuk. It's not a choshen. The point is, you're normally able to put your hand in what do you call it? A bowl. What do you call it? A receptacle that has a tiny, tiny spout that you can't put your finger in, so it can't become tamei through a zav because I can't put my finger in. So small little jar is tahar by a zav, but tamei by mace. But by a mace, if it's in the airspace of a corpse, the airspace goes in. So little jars are not tamei by a zav, but tamei by the dead. So mapit shemetame bezav, ein adin shemetame b'meis. So a mat which is tamei by zav, kal v'chomer. So let me explain to you the kal v'chomer, and you'll see where we're not employing daya. How do I know that a wooden mat becomes tamei through a dead body? Well, if it becomes tamei through a zav, kal v'chomer become tamei through a dead body. How long is it tamei if it's tamei by a zav? 1 day. How long is it tamei if it's tamei by a dead body? 7 days. So think about it. How do I know that a mat is tummy by a dead body? Well, if it's tummy by a zav, kal v'chomer, it's tummy by a dead body. That's no daya, because a zav, it's tummy one day. So if it's tummy by a zav one day, kal v'chomer, it's tummy by a dead body 7 days. That's a kal v'chomer, way past daya.
Already, which are 7 days.
So that's according to one opinion at the end of the Gemara. The Gemara says that according to one version. There is one version that basically responds that this is not a good example of that because all it's telling you is that a mat is tameh. What type of tumah? Well, mace has its own rules. But the Gemara does not like that. The Gemara feels that this is an example of a kal v'chomer bypassing without daya. Because think about it. How do I know a mat is tameh mace? Well, if it's tameh by a zav for 1 day, it'll be tameh by a mace for 7 days. Well, that's an example of a kal v'chomer. You should employ daya. You should say, listen, you want it to be tameh, it's tameh 1 day. So this is an example of a Tana making a kal v'chomer without employing daya. So the Gemara says, you know what? And I'm going to go this quick because it's 8:31 already. I'm going to go to 8:35. This is going to be fast. Just hold on. The Gemara answers, you know what? The answer is, it's a good point. This price is really flawed. It's not a kal v'chomer. It's a gzeira shava. And let me just explain outside what we're going to be doing. We're going to be doing the same thing with a gzeira shava, but gzeira shava is one rule, and that is for gzeira shava to work. You need, it's called mufne, which means gzeira shava means that there's a word here and there's a word there. There's a word by misa and there's a word by sheretz, let's say. So to connect the two, once there's a gzeira shava, I don't really care about the rules as much. But in order for a gzeira shava to be perfect, I need both words to be extra. The word by misa and the word by sheretz to be extra. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to say really it's a gzeira shava, and the words on both sides are extra. Let's run through it. The Gemara says, "V'amai, wait a minute. This is an example of a kal v'chomer not employing daya. Because again, how do I know this is the kal v'chomer? How do I know a wooden mat is tameh? Well, if it's tameh 1 day by a zav, kal v'chomer would be tameh 7 days by a tameh mace. That's an example of kal v'chomer without daya. So the answer is Amar le kvarama niloi Rav Nechumi bar Zechariah la'Abaya. Rav Nechumi bar Zechariah already asked us to Abaya. V'amar le Abaya Tana mimapit sheres ma'aseh. Abaya says, you know what the answer is? This is not a kal v'chomer. This is actually a gzeira shava that a wooden mat is tamei mace, and it's not learned out from a zav, it's learned out from a sheretz. So completely you're going to change the brisa. What does the brisa actually mean? This is what the brisa actually means. Mapit misheretz minayin. Let's start off. How do I know a mat contracts tuma with a sheretz? Forget about misa yet, let's start with a sheretz. How do I know that if a dead lizard goes on a wooden mat, that it's tamei? Well, dinu, it's a kal v'chomer. Uma pachim ketanim shetarim b'zav tameim b'sheretz. Mabit shetam b'zav and it didn't shetam b'sheretz. Well, if it's tamei by a zav, kal v'chomer is tamei by a sheretz. That we're good so far. So that was the kal v'chomer, but now we're changing it. So I know that it's tamei by a zav because it's a pasuk. It's tamei by a sheretz kal v'chomer. How do I know that it's tamei by a dead body? Elamabitz b'meis menayin. Small weed.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great. Elamabitz b'meis menayin. Our neighbor outside. He must be just sitting by the door smoking. Mabitz b'meis menayin. How do I know that it's tamei by a dead body? So we before said kal v'chomer without a dye. No. It's a gzeira shava. Never. The rest of the daf is going to start becoming a little more fun. Nemer beged v'ar b'sheretz. It says the word beged and ar by sheretz. V'nemer beged v'ar b'meis, and it says the word beged and ar by meis. Ma beged v'ar ha'amr b'sheretz tamei loy. Af beged ar b'meis tamei loy. It says the word beged and ar by sheretz. And it says the word beged ar by mace. Just like by sheretz, it's tamei 1 day, so to by mace, it's tamei 7 days. It's the same problem. Yes, it's a gzeira shava. Okay, so it's a gzeira shava. We thought it was a kal v'chomer. The answer is it's a gzeira shava. What's the gzeira? And the gzeira shava is from the word beged and ar by sheretz, beged and ar by mace. And as I said before, if you want a gzeira shava to be perfect, make sure both words are extra on both sides. Mufne, they're both extra. Why? Eloi mufne k'lemivrach. Because actually, if it wasn't extra, I could actually have a kasha. What's the kasha? You're comparing a sheretz to a dead body. Mala sheretz shekein metame bechadasha. A sheretz is able to contract conveys tuma with a bone the size of a lentil. Tamar b'meish in metame chadasha l'chazayis. A dead body, it conveys tuma by the size of a kazayis. That's why you need it to be extra. How do I know that it's extra? It says beged or by sheretz, beged or by mace. We're going to prove that both are extra. La yafnu yu efna. The words are extra. Why are the words extra? It says by sheretz, beged and ar that they're able to contaminate by a sheretz. You want to know why that's extra? Michdi sheretz iskish l'shich v'azara. We know that a sheretz is connected to semen. D'chsev oyesh asher teitzei v'samach lo yesh asher yiga b'chol sheretz is a smichus connecting sheretz to Shechva Zera, uksibe b'Shechva Zera v'chol beged v'chol or. And it says by Shechva Zera v'chol beged v'chol or. So why do you need the words beged by or v'sharetz? It's extra. Beged by or the chasar chumana b'sharetz lamali shmami lafnuya. So the words beged and or are extra on one side. How do we know they're extra on the other side? V'akati mufna mitzad echadu. That's only one side being extra. One side being extra is not great. You want both sides. Why? If you hold that it's only extra on one side, then it's no good. It has to be extra on both sides. So the Gemara says, "Din meis nami afnui mufna." The word beged and or is extra on meis as well. Why? Michti meis ishkel zera. Same point. There's a connection between misa and semen. And by beged and or, it says by shechva zera, beged v'or. Meaning, in other words, you don't need the words beged and or by sheretz or misa. Why? Because it says the words beged and or by shechva zera, and shechva zera is compared to misa and it's compared to sheretz. So what do you need the words beged by or by sheretz and beged by or by misa? They're extra. So basically, in other words, like this. We started with a kasha. Isn't this a kavachomer without da'ayai? The answer is no, it's not a kavachomer, it's a gzeir shava. How so? It says by sheretz that it's tameh, that a flat mat is tameh. Gzeir shava, that by misa is tameh. By sheretz it's tameh one day. Gzeir shava, that is misa, is tameh for 7 days. It's the same issue. It's just it's a gzeir shava, and it's not a kavachomer. So the Gemara says, there is one opinion that holds that you can't do it by a gzeir shava either. Meaning, we're assuming that this whole thing of da'ayai applies to kavachomer, but gzeir shava, do whatever you want. There is an opinion that holds that it's the same problem by gzeir shava as well. So again, what's a gzeir shava? How do I know that a mat is tameh for 7 days by a dead body? Because if it's tameh one day by a sheretz, gzeir shava, it's tameh 7 days. So it's the same issue. It's da'ayai. It's not a kavachomer, it's gzeir shava. There is one opinion that holds you can't do it by gzeir shava either. So how do you respond to that? And the answer is what Gavin said. The answer is Amar Rava, Amar Krabi, Chibaztem b'chdechem b'yoyim hashvi, kol tumashatem etam meis lo yibchus mishiva. The answer is, what's the gzeir shava? We know that it's tameh one day by a sheretz. Gzeir shava tells me that it's tameh by a mace for 7 days. Oh, it's not the same. The answer is, the gzeir shava tells me that if it's tameh by a sheretz, it's tameh by a mace. Mace has their own rules. You can't have misa for 1 day. It's not possible. Kol mitamish at the mitamech shevas yom. So therefore, it's not a problem at all. It's a gzeir shava, and it's tameh for 1 day by a sheretz. Gzeir shava tells me that it's tameh by a mace. Oh, you should make it also limited to 1 day. We don't do that. All tumas misa is 7 days. So there's a Rabbi Nachman has one sheet in the Rashba that he actually says that this could answer the same thing for a kavachomer. Really, it could also be a kavachomer. I da'ayai, the answer is the same thing. Once the kavachomer tells me that it applies to misa, there is no such thing as a 1 day misa. It's 7 days only. But the Gemara more likes to apply it to gzeir shava. All right, we'll stop here. If you chazer it over, it makes a lot of sense.